There is a specific kind of silence that exists only deep within the Black Forest. It isn't empty. It's the kind of silence that feels heavy, like something is holding its breath, waiting for you to make a mistake. My mistake was taking Route 500 as a shortcut to beat the storm. At 11:42 p.m., the digital dashboard flickered, the headlights dimmed to a sickly yellow, and the engine simply died. No sputtering, no warning lights, just complete, sudden, mechanical failure. The car rolled to a stop on a narrow, unpaved logging road, flanked by ancient pine trees so tall they blocked out the moonlight. I sat there for 10 minutes, listening to the ticking of the cooling engine. No cell service, not a single bar. The temperature outside was dropping fast, already below freezing. I grabbed my flashlight and popped the hood, thinking it was a loose battery terminal. The moment I stepped out of the car, the smell hit me. It wasn't the scent of pine or cold earth. It was a thick, rancid stench of wet fur, rotting leaves, and old blood. It was suffocating. I shined the flashlight down at the tires to check the alignment, and my heart stopped. Pressed deep into the freezing mud, just inches from my boots, were tracks. They were cloven hooves, but the size was impossible. They were larger than my outstretched hand, pressed so deep into the packed dirt that whatever made them had to weigh over 1,000 pounds. And the terrifying part, the mud was still slowly filling the indentations with dark water. The tracks were completely fresh. I traced them with my light. They didn't cross the road. They circled my car twice. I wasn't just stranded. I was already trapped inside a hunting ground. I didn't run back to the driver's seat. I moved with a slow, mechanical panic, terrified that a sudden movement would trigger an attack. I slammed the door, locked it, and rolled up the windows until the motors whined. The inside of the car suddenly felt like a tin can. Then the silence broke. It wasn't a roar. It was a sound I felt in my teeth before I heard it. A deep, rhythmic, sub-bass grunting vibrating through the wet forest floor. It was moving closer, deliberately stepping on dry branches to announce its presence. I flicked the high beams on. The light cut through the fog, and there it was, standing right at the edge of the tree line. It was an alpha wild boar, a keeler, but mutated by age, dominance, and pure survival. Its shoulders were higher than the hood of my car. Its body was a tank of dense, scarred muscle, covered in matted black bristles and thick layers of dried, armor-like mud. But it was the head that paralyzed me. A massive, wedge-shaped skull equipped with lower tusks that were easily 10 inches long, thick as pickaxe handles, stained yellow and jagged from tearing bark. It didn't flinch at the blinding light. Its small, pale eyes locked onto me through the windshield. It lowered its massive head, scraping its tusks against the gravel, kicking up sparks. I braced myself against the steering wheel. It didn't just run. It exploded forward with the force of a freight train. The impact against the front bumper deployed the airbags instantly. The entire chassis lifted off the ground, metal shrieking, glass flexing. My head slammed into the headrest when the smoke from the airbags cleared. It was still there, unaffected, staring at me through the dented hood. For the next 2 hours, the beast engaged in systematic psychological and physical warfare. It wasn't a mindless animal. It was methodical. After the first strike, it realized the front engine block was too solid. So, it moved to the sides. It began pacing around the vehicle, huffing its foul breath onto the windows, searching for weak points. Every 10 minutes, it would back up into the darkness, disappear completely, and then launch itself at the passenger doors. The car rocked violently on its suspension. The metal skin of the door buckled inward. Jamming the locking mechanism, I watched in horror as the steel door frame physically bent away from the rubber weather stripping. The freezing wind began howling through the gap, bringing that putrid smell of musk directly into the cabin. I tried to honk the horn to scare it off, but the electrical system was failing, producing only a pathetic, dying croak. That only seemed to enrage the boar further. It stood on its hind legs, an impossible feat for its size, and slammed its front hooves onto the roof, caving the ceiling in just inches from my skull. Then it found the real vulnerability. The driver's side window. It pressed its massive snout right against the glass. I could see the thick scars on its snout, the coarse hairs, the hot drool smearing the window. It angled its head, positioned that 10-inch ivory dagger of a tusk against the center of the glass, and pushed. A sharp, agonizing crack echoed in the cabin. A spider web of fractures spread across the entire window. One more hit, and the glass would shatter completely, leaving me completely exposed. At exactly 4:10 a.m., the final spark of battery power drained. The faint glow of the dashboard faded to black. The interior light died. The headlights, which had been weakly illuminating the mist, went completely dark. I was plunged into absolute, suffocating blackness, sensory deprivation in the middle of a nightmare. Without my sight, my hearing became hypersensitive. I could hear every single movement it made outside, the heavy crunch of its hooves grinding against the gravel, the wet, rhythmic snorting right next to the air vents. I could hear its coarse bristles scraping along the side panels of the car, tearing off the paint. It was walking slow, confident laps around my steel tomb. I had a decision to make. The driver's window was compromised. It wouldn't survive another impact. If I stayed, I would be gored to death inside a metal box with no room to move. But out there it was its domain. I remember driving past an old elevated wooden hunting stand, a Hochsitz, about half a mile down the road. It was built heavily with thick logs, elevated 12 feet in the air. I waited until the sound of its hooves crunched around to the rear trunk of the car. I gripped my flashlight in my left hand, the heavy tire iron in my right. I slowly wrapped my fingers around the door handle. My heart was beating so hard, I was terrified the beast could hear it vibrating through the floorboards. I counted to 3 in my head. On 3, I wouldn't look back. I would just run. 1, 2, 3. I kicked the damaged door open with both feet. The metal screamed as it forced itself past the bent frame. I hit the freezing dirt and sprinted into the blinding fog. For 2 seconds, there was silence. Then, the forest erupted. A demonic squeal tore through the night, followed by the sound of an 18-wheeler crashing through the underbrush. It was coming for me, and it was impossibly fast. The ground literally trembled beneath my boots. I didn't dare turn on the flashlight. It would only give away my exact position. I ran by memory, lungs burning, branches tearing at my face. I could hear it snapping small trees behind me, the heavy thud of its hooves closing the distance. 20 yards. 10 yards. I could smell the hot, foul rot of its breath on the wind. Suddenly, the dark shape of the hunting tower loomed out of the fog. I threw the tire iron into the brush, leaped onto the wooden ladder, and scrambled upward, my hands slipping on the icy rungs. I felt a violent rush of air against my ankles just as I pulled my legs onto the top platform. Crack! The entire 12-foot tower violently swayed. The boar had slammed headfirst into the thick pine support pillars. It didn't stop. It began gouging the wood with its tusks, tearing off massive chunks of bark and timber, trying to bring the entire structure down. I lay flat on the freezing wooden planks, staring down into the darkness, listening to the relentless destruction below. It laid siege to the tower for over an hour. Only when the sky began to turn a bruised, pale gray did the attack stop. I slowly peered over the edge. In the weak morning light, the monster stood there one last time. It looked up at me, let out a long, steaming breath, and slowly turned, melting away into the dense pines as if it was never there. It didn't leave because it couldn't reach me. It left because the sun was coming up. But as I looked back down the road at my totally destroyed car, I knew the truth. It let me live, just to remind me who truly owns the Black Forest.